Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I have success. So just stand by 1 second. We are redirecting. Wonderful. Thank you for your patience. I was able to load the link again and you are live.
Okay, well, thank you very much and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kitchener City Council meeting, the last one of the year for December 13th, 2021. Due to COVID-19 and recommendations from Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise physical distancing, City Hall continues to only be open for select services. Members of the public were invited to participate in meetings electronically by accessing the meeting live stream video at kitchener.ca/watchnow. While in-person delegation requests were not feasible at this time, members of the public were invited to submit written comments or participate electronically in future meetings by contacting delegation@kitchener.ca. Any written comments that were received ahead of the meeting have been shared with council and will form part of the public record for this evening's meeting. I'd now like to begin the meeting as we normally do with the land acknowledgement, acknowledging that this evening we're gathering on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. And now I'd like to invite everyone to stand as they're able for the singing of our national anthem. And I'd invite members of council to close their cameras while they stand. Thanks. Thank you very much, everyone. The first item of business is approval of the minutes on motion by Councillor Davey. The minutes of the regular meeting held November 22nd and special meetings held November 22nd, 29th, 30th, and December 6th, as provided to the mayor and councillors, be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Michaud. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, we'll go communications referred to file, and you'll notice the communication pertaining to liquor license sales and patio extensions. And now we'll move into presentations and delegations. I do want to remind delegations that they do have 5 minutes to make their presentation. Although I know a couple of them tonight because they involve the Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro and Waterloo North Hydro merger, as well as our Compass Kitchener work will take a little longer. So I'll start with 6.1, and that is the merger of the two hydro utilities. And I'd like to welcome Jerry Van Oudegem and Jim Phillips, the CEO and the chair, respectively. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll start off with just a few comments and then pass things over to Jerry, who'll be doing the presentation for council. So thank you to council again this evening for giving us some time on your agenda. We've had discussions on this topic for the past year or so, and it's really a pleasure to be here tonight for sure. As chair of Kitchener Power Corp, and on behalf of not only KPC board, but also the boards of KWHI and KESI. Very pleased this evening to update and indicate to council that, as stated in my letter to you of December the 3rd, and I believe that was an appendix in your package for this evening, our board is unanimously recommending to you that we proceed with the proposed merger, and that you consider the approval related to the merger participation agreement this evening. Through the negotiations of the past 2 months, since the memorandum of understandings were agreed to and approved, we believe that the conditions that were set forth by our boards and also by our shareholder councils have been met. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jerry, our president and CEO, for a brief presentation, and then we would welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Van Oudegem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my pleasure to present to you and fellow councillors and all those on the call an update since our last meeting presentation to council on October 4th. I'll begin on the next slide with a little bit of background information on how we got here, and then update you on what we've done since then. So I guess go back one slide to the background summary. We did retain an independent advisor, Kitchener Power Corp and Waterloo North Hydro Corp, to work together and evaluate the business case for merging the two utilities. We carefully looked at the business case and all of the legal and financial issues associated with that. Independent advisors, legal, financial, and technical advisors were retained and conducted due diligence on the proposed merger. And finally, a memorandum of understanding was prepared and presented to council on October 4th. Next slide. So at that meeting, council approved the memorandum of understanding, which is a non-binding agreement, and gave direction to staff and our board to proceed with finalizing a merger participation agreement and the unanimous shareholders agreement, and to move forward with the public engagement process and report back to council prior to the end of the year. The merger participation agreement and the unanimous shareholders agreement are now in final form, ready for consideration by council and your approval. We retained National PR, who worked with both Waterloo North Hydro and ourselves to complete the community engagement process. Next slide. So on October 1st, it was a public announcement of the proposed merger of the two holding corporations, and as well as Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro and Waterloo North Hydro. The public engagement phase commenced following approval of the memorandum of understanding by all 5 councils on October 4th and 5th. And the purpose of that public engagement plan was to inform our customers, our residents and our employees of the proposed merger, and to raise awareness and understanding of the rationale of and the benefits of the merger. A communication campaign was launched called Connecting Local Power, and a microsite was set up as the hub for this communications to keep residents informed and to provide them a vehicle for asking questions. At the same time, we also set up an internal SharePoint site that was used to update our staff and view all of the latest information that was available. Next slide. On October 19th, a virtual public information session was held in the evening, and residents who attended that information session received an overview of the merger and had their questions answered by panelists from both parties. The 23 people registered for the public information session. There was a steady flow of questions during the 1-hour session, and there were a number of topics that were covered during that 1-hour session that I've listed on the slide. Next slide. So as of November 11th, there were just over 3,800 visitors to the website, and the highest number of users were from the following municipalities: so Kitchener, Toronto, the City of Waterloo, and Cambridge. The website received a total of 16 inquiries from residents, some comments and some questions, and all of those were responded to and answers posted on the website. In addition, there was content and graphics created for social media posts in all 5 municipalities, as well as Kitchener-Waterloo Hydro and Waterloo North Hydro used this information to post on social media. In addition, a communications package was prepared for municipal councillors. Overall, the proposed merger received mostly positive feedback from residents who asked questions and from news media. A little bit about next steps on the next slide. So, subject to approval of the merger participation agreement by all 5 of the councils, there's still significant work to do before the transaction can close. The merger participation agreement, along with the attached schedules, which includes the unanimous shareholders agreement, will need to be executed by all the parties. Following that, an application will be made to the Ontario Energy Board and the Competition Bureau for approval of the merger. The unanimous shareholders agreement, although it would be attached to the merger agreement, would not get signed until after the Ontario Energy Board approval is received and just prior to closing. That review process is expected to take approximately 6 months. So during that time, there's a number of other initiatives that will be carried out, including the selection of the new board, the board chair and the CEO, as well as other activities to prepare to start the new company. A new name will also be identified for approval. It is expected that the new company would likely not begin operations until the 3rd quarter of 2022. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, there's been significant effort and discussions that have occurred amongst the parties to develop and finalize these agreements, the MPA and the USA. They meet the terms set out in the Memorandum of Understanding that was approved by Council in October and represent a fair and reasonable approach to this merger. We will continue with the community engagement website through the 1st quarter of 2022. And we will also continue to monitor our social media and traditional media and respond to any resident inquiries. We have met all the conditions precedent from the councils to proceed with the merger. Next slide. So as already mentioned by our chair, having reviewed and thoroughly discussed the merger participation agreement, the unanimous shareholders agreement, and the public engagement report, the Board of Kitchener Power Corporation, as well as the subsidiary corporations, unanimously recommend to each of the councils that council authorize each of Kitchener Power Corp, Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro Inc., and Kitchener Energy Services Inc. to enter into the merger participation agreement, and that each municipality do the same. That's the end of my presentation, Mr. Mayor, and the chair and I are available for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. And I think before we open the floor to questions, I do want to take this opportunity to publicly thank and acknowledge the two of you, the project group from our side, which I know has included some other board members, as well as our CAO, Dan Chapman, and Mr. Lautenbach, who have been working alongside with you on the Kitchener-Wilmot end of things from the Kitchener perspective to get things to this point. And I know literally hundreds of hours of work have gone into this by this team, in addition to the work of our consultants, to get us to the point that this recommendation is before council this evening. And so I wanted to publicly thank and acknowledge you and ask you to pass on our thanks to the others from a hydro perspective that have been involved. We'll obviously do that here to our city team that's been part of it. So with that, there are some questions, and I'll start with Councillor Gazzola.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll just write on your thanks to all the people that have been involved. Jerry and Jim, I just do want to ask you, how long has your board been working on this proposal?
It's been, over a year for sure. I mean, we started at a very high level to look at, the feasibility of doing this and if there were any potential benefits of doing this proposed transaction. So, probably we've been talking for closer to a year and a half on, where we've been starting to work on evaluating the business case opportunity around it. But I would say, over the last year, we've been heavily involved in working through all the details of what this transaction might look like.
Yeah, I just wanted to really point that out to our ratepayers, to our taxpayers, that you put a considerable amount of research and investigation and study. It's not something that's taken lightly. There's been a fair amount of work. If I could just briefly ask you, and I've asked this before, how long will it be before our customers really counting on this passing? I'm sure it'll pass with this council and the other councils, and then it's up to the Ontario Energy Board, and I'm hopeful that they will approve where we're going. How long will it be before our customers really see any difference, if there is any difference?
And so part of the proposal that's being put forward to the Ontario Energy Board is that Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro rate classes would be maintained for a period of 20 years. So we would maintain separate are separate rate classes for a period of 20 years. And that's really to give the new company time to harmonize the rates over an extended period so that no customers are harmed as a result of this transaction. So there is a difference in rates between our rates, our distribution rates and those of Waterloo. But we're proposing a slow harmonization process. And during the initial 10 years, rates will be, limited to the rate of inflation over the initial 10 years. So there really is long-term rate stability that's being proposed as part of this transaction.
Again, thank you for your answer. I was aware of that, and it will take a considerable period of time before the customers really do see any difference. And hopefully long into the future, I might not be here. I'm sure it will be a better product for our customers. Mr. Mayor, I would like the opportunity to bring this motion forward. It's Finance Report 2021-68. If I could have the honor of moving the recommendation later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Normally we would go to the chair of the Finance Committee, but I will ask if he's okay with that. Yep, so welcome to you, Councillor Gazzola. Thank you. Councillor Singh, you're next.
Mr. Mayor, and I think you've already said it best, in appreciation by this council and as a community as a whole for the tremendous amount of effort and hours that have been dedicated by both yourself, Jerry, and Jim as the board president. Having sat on the board myself, there's lengthy conversations that have led us to this point, and of course, with collaboration of our city staff as well, along with all the other partners. So thank you so much to the both of you. This is absolutely a community defining moment, and so privileged to be a part of this decision making. And Councillor Gazzola has already said he wants to he wants to bring the motion forward. I would love to second it when the opportunity comes. My question to both of you, Jim and Jerry, would be, you've already referenced the 20-year sit-out period where the City of Kitchener ratepayers or Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro customers, ratepayers would continue having some stability on the rates. I think what may be missed out is the fact that we also would safeguard ourselves, ensuring that stability instead of a potential of a forced merger, or perhaps someone else coming and buying, where we would not have the necessary control in setting the rates. Can you comment on that?
Yes, Councillor Singh, I'll maybe open up on that. I think you have highlighted a really important aspect of this merger. This is a merger that is decided upon and made locally, as opposed to it being imposed by, for example, another level of government or whatever. Certainly, although the province is not mandating that mergers happen amongst LDCs, they are strongly encouraging it. And we see this as a local solution, and it really builds for the future. It allows our communities to be much better prepared, we feel, for what's coming around increased electrification, the infrastructure that will be required for that, and all of our goals of getting to net zero down the road. So we really see that as an important aspect of the proposed merger, for sure.
So what I'm hearing is that we are absolutely future-proofing. It's not necessarily just about the synergies and the efficiencies that may be garnered with the, the joining of the companies, but also we are future-proofing. And does it make us more nimble in looking at opportunities that may be unregulated, but still good investments by the corporation that gives a better value and return to the shareholder, where in our perspective, it is the City of Kitchener residents?
Yes, I would say it does. Certainly, we're looking very much to the future on the unregulated side of the energy sector as well. And I think as all councillors are aware, we are investors in Grand River Energy, which is very much looking at solutions to energy issues in the unregulated sector. And whether that be solar, battery storage, a whole array of potential. And I think this merger will allow us to very much focus through Grand River Energy and perhaps through the new entity itself as well into all of those areas.
Thank you to both of you once more. And from your answers, it's clear to see that the opportunities are boundless. Thanks again.
Thanks, Councillor Chapman.
Yes, thank you for this report, and it's good to see things moving forward. I just had a question about the Canadian Competition Bureau, and I wanted to know if you anticipate any obstacles coming from that body, given its mandate, right? And I'm not sure how it views mergers, but I just wondered if you anticipated any problems at that level.
Yeah, our legal counsel is not anticipating any challenges with that process. It is a mandatory application, that we do need to make as part of any merger. But the information we received is that we don't expect any problems with that application.
Okay, great. I just wanted to throw that question out there, and thank you for bringing this to us.
Welcome.
Wonderful, thank you. That looks like it's all of the questions. So I'll move to the motion. Councillor Gazzola, you're moving it, and Councillor Singh, if you're there, you are. You've asked to second it. Any additional comments?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add is just to point out to our citizens that when these companies are merged, we'll have a brand new company, and the citizens of the city of Kitchener will have a 53.4% share of the new and larger corporation. So I do really feel confident from the work that's been put into it that in the long run, it really is a win-win situation, not only for the ratepayers in the city of Kitchener, but I think for the ratepayers in the majority of the region of Waterloo, with 3 other rural municipalities involved and the large urban municipality of Waterloo. So I'm totally confident that it is the right move. I think our people have done a tremendous amount of homework and research, and I'm sure that they will be able to steer it through the Ontario Energy Board so that they give their approval in the fullness of time. When we do come to it, it is quite a special moment in our community, so I would like to have a recorded vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola, and I will go to a recorded vote. Are there any other comments before I make mine? Councillor Marsh? Just want to remind everyone, keep using the raise hand feature, please.
Yeah, I normally do, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to add my thanks to the staff on our side and on the hydro side. Jerry, you have been at the helm for many years. We won't name how many, but you have been a strong and steady leader, and we are so appreciative of all the work that you've done to get us to this point. And Jim as well, you have also been the leader for years of this hydro board. So kudos to the two of you, and to Mr. Chapman, and to all the others who have gotten us here. So it's the end of an era, but or will be when this goes through. But let's hope for a continuation of all the amazing work that Kitchener has been able to do to lead the way in this merger going forward.
Any other comments? If not, then I will quickly make mine. As Councillor Marcia said, it's the end of an era, but also the beginning of an era. And I think it really speaks to an exciting time for the communities of Kitchener and Waterloo and the townships of Wilmot, Wellesley, Woolwich, who are part of this new hydro utility. And I think it really speaks to the commitment on the part of our respective councils to continually look at the services we have, how we deliver them, including those that we have through our ownership of the electric utilities, and working to ensure that we bring more value to both our customers and to the municipal shareholders of our hydro companies. I think, as everyone's aware, Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro has a long history of providing clean, reliable, and affordable electric power to our communities, and has been an important asset, which has allowed us to help drive and grow the local economy, which has been a core objective, I know, of successive councils here. I think in the end, being able to bring about this kind of merger is important for the communities of this region, and helps ensure that we're going to see these utilities continue to play an important role in our community and continue to be owned by the community. And in an ever-changing world, that's extremely important. And the last point I will make is, I think this is just a further example of the kinds of collaboration and shared services that exists amongst the region, amongst municipalities within this region. We know that we have over 50 shared services that involve the city of Waterloo, sometimes all of the municipalities, including the region, sometimes just certain municipalities. And so I really want to say this is just really part of that history and that legacy, and continuing to build on it going forward. So again, our thanks to all of you, and a recorded vote has been called. So I will start with Ward 1, Councillor Davey.
In favor.
Councillor Schneider.
In favor.
Councillor Gazzola.
In favor.
Councillor Michaud.
In favor.
Councillor Galloway-Silak.
In favor.
Councillor Singh.
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Johnson.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor?
Councillor Marsh.
In favor.
And I too am in favor, and that makes it unanimous. Congratulations, gentlemen, and thank you again for all of your work in this regard.
Thank you very much to council, and we'll begin working on the future tomorrow morning.
Wonderful. No rest over the holidays for you, Jim. Well, have a little rest, actually. Anyway, take care. Thank you, gentlemen. All the best over the holiday season.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move on to our next item, which is 6.2, Compass Kitchener. And I believe, Mr. Chapman, you're going to start things off?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as we're well aware, the pandemic continues to be an issue around the world and in our local community. The health and the well-being of Kitchener residents is our top priority. But even in the midst of all of that, I'm really pleased to share with Council that great progress has been made through sustained efforts towards implementing our 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. Next slide, please. This chart may look familiar to you. It outlines the 25 strategic actions in our plan. The gold hexagons are the actions which are underway, while the green hexagons are the completed actions. And what you'll see is that in 2021, we successfully completed 7 more of the actions in the plan. In my view, to have completed any one of these would have been a significant cause for celebration. But the fact that over 1/4 of the plan was delivered in 2021, I believe is remarkable. As we go to slide 3, I'd like to highlight a few of our 2021 accomplishments. First of all, in the implementation of the Cycling and Trails Master Plan, our target was to achieve 3 kilometers of existing trails being maintained year-round for public access by 2022. To this point in 2021, we've achieved our target with an additional 4 kilometers being maintained, and another 5 kilometers are planned for 2022. Council declared a climate emergency, and in response, we worked with all municipalities and many stakeholders across the region to create the Community Climate Action Plan, Transform WR, which was approved by Council in June. And third, the Mayor's Task Force created the Corporate Equity and Anti-Racism Strategy in 2021, with most of the actions already implemented, including the setting up of a staff team and initial steps to create a citizen advisory committee, a grant program, and policies and training for council and staff. Next slide, please. 4 of 5 actions within the Great Customer Service theme have been completed. Those include multi-language interpretation support, the Customer Satisfaction Program, the Customer Experience Program, and My Kitchener, which is Kitchener's first online customer service portal. Each of these actions make it easier for residents to access city services and for service to be continuously improved. The My Kitchener online portal was developed in conjunction with our website refresh and has exceeded targets for people making customized profiles to stay connected with the city and to receive the information that's of greatest interest to them. Last slide, please. We can all feel proud of the work that was accomplished in achieving or advancing the strategic plan in 2021. And it's also been very gratifying to see that our work has been recognized by the Canadian Institute of Planners and also by the Ontario Traffic Council for Kitchener's Cycling and Trails Master Plan. We've been recognized by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for Housing for All, Kitchener's housing strategy, and by Municipal World for our 2019 through 2022 strategic plan. Kitchener received these awards due to innovation in public engagement, in making positive impacts in our quality of life, and in addressing equity issues, all of which are important to Kitchener citizens. So thank you for the time to provide this brief overview of progress made in 2021. I'd now like to introduce Chair Judy Stevens-Wells and Vice Chair Omar Samad from Compass Kitchener Citizen Advisory Committee, who will present the committee's evaluation of the implementation of the strategic plan from June 2019 to December 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman, and welcome Judy and welcome Omar. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Verbanovic, members of council, and members of the public. We're really delighted to be here this evening to provide you with a quick overview of Compass Kitchener's evaluation of the city's progress implementing the 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. Next slide, please. You can see listed here the Compass Kitchener members, as well as the 2 city staff who provide terrific support to our work. As you know, Compass Kitchener has a mandate to provide advice to council on a regular basis. And with the city's input, or with the community's input and participation, to do the following. First, to determine evaluation criteria for measuring council implementation of strategic priorities, to monitor and evaluate progress towards strategic priorities, to report to council and the community on progress towards achieving strategic priorities, and to establish reporting tools to monitor progress in collaboration with staff. Next slide, please. Oh, we seem to have missed one. The presentation this evening is going to cover 3 areas. First, the overall evaluation results. Second, the areas to pay attention to moving forward. And thirdly, the areas that exceeded expectations. Next slide, please. In the course of our review, we reviewed 12 of the completed projects towards the current strategic plan. The really impressive characteristics that we found in a number of the strategic projects that have been completed were the extensive public consultation that was carried out, the really complete information that was shared on the city's website, the target dates that were met or exceeded despite all the restrictions that we faced with COVID, and the projects that have provided additional benefits specific to times of COVID. Of the 12 projects that we reviewed, we're really impressed to have found that 6 of those projects exceeded all the expectations that we have outlined. And we'll come back to talk more about those in just a minute. And the remaining 6 that we reviewed met our expectations. And those 6 were the multi-language customer service, customer satisfaction program, customer experience review program, urban design guidelines, complete streets, and community climate action. Next slide, please. There were 7 areas that we identified that we felt would benefit from further attention moving forward. And I'd like to really highlight a couple of those now. First, that consistent project management standards, statement of desired impacts, and clear articulation of budgets and timelines would really strengthen project results, transparency, and accountability. And secondly, that consistent reporting on all strategic plan projects on a dashboard on the city's website would really help keep the public better informed of the city's accomplishments in implementing this plan. Having identified the strategic plan areas that need attention, Compass Kitchener met with the corporate leadership team to have a discussion about those areas. And we're really delighted to report that staff will be making improvements in these areas as detailed in the staff report, which you've also received. And we're particularly pleased to see that a commitment has been made to develop and include a simple strategic plan dashboard on the strategic plan website page, something that Compass Kitchener has focused on for a number of years. As I mentioned, Compass Kitchener was really impressed to find that 6 of the completed projects exceeded our expectations. And those 6, next slide. Those 6, as you can see, were the Cycling and Trails Master Plan, the Housing for All Strategy, Make It Kitchener 2.0 Strategy, the Corporate Climate Action Plan, the My Kitchener Citizen Portal, and the Corporate Equity and Anti-Racism Strategy. And now I'd like to turn things over to Omar Samad to carry on with the balance of our presentation.
Thank you, Judy. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, members of the city staff, and members of the public. So the first project that Compass Kitchener found exceed expectation is the Cycling and Trail Master Plan. It was really good to see that the leadership in moving forward with implementation during the pandemic, which is a time when the people, the public needed this the most, to go out and walk on the trails. The project had excellent funding and exceeded both the time and the scope targets. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I think we're still on. Oh, yep. Next slide, please. Okay. Housing for All strategy is another project where we did find great city leadership in different aspects, like the land for supportive housing, for example. It looked at the complete spectrum and discussed housing as a human right. We did see excellent engagement with live experiences and diverse collaboration as well. Next slide, please. Moving to Make It Kitchener 2.0, the strategy combines social and environmental issues together with addressing economic concerns and pandemic recovery. And the best part is that there was no tax implication to the citizens by securing sustainable funding, funding resources from city lands, from city lands and the Economic Development Reserve. Next slide, please. The My Kitchener Citizen Portal was a great success, and this did show in the number of new accounts created that did exceed the expectations. It was also great to see the improvement for citizen accessibility and having online service when people, again, needed this the most with the pandemic. We were happy to see Kitchener as a leader in online city services across Canada. Next slide, please. The Corporate Climate Action Plan did also exceed expectations. We saw again leadership with actions to reduce greenhouse emissions. It was great to see the plan discuss the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we did notice commitment on completing 2 implementation reports throughout the plan of the project. Next slide. And that's the last of the 6 projects is the corporate strategy on equity and anti-racism, where there was extensive involvement of equity-seeking stakeholders and great representation on the task force. The strategy was action-oriented with a clear just do it attitude. Next slide. So in conclusion, Compass Kitchener found it very impressive to see 12 projects completed with extensive public consultation despite of the pandemic and all the challenges and obstacles that it caused. We also was also impressive to see 6 of these completed projects exceed expectations. All of this is an outstanding accomplishment, which makes us proud of the city, and these accomplishments we need to recognize and celebrate these achievements. We also want to thank the city leadership, the city staff, for a great relationship with a great respect to our mandate and support our work. Thank you for listening to us, and I think now we're open it to any questions.
Wonderful. Well, let me begin, Judy and Omar, by thanking both of you for not only coming in tonight and making this this presentation. I'd be remiss, or I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm certainly delighted with many of the comments, and actually looking forward to the areas that you identified for improvement, because I think any organization always needs to look for that. I, in particular, though, would ask you to pass on our thanks to the entire Compass Kitchener committee. And as you know, we come to the end of our 20-year cycle of the existing strategic plan. Compass Kitchener actually came into existence as a result of that original strategic plan. And to this day, we are one of the only cities that actually has a citizen committee that evaluates the city and their council on how they're doing on delivering on community priorities. And it's something that I think you know, we should be very proud of, but it would only happen by having good people such as yourselves and the others on the committee who devote a great deal of time and passion for our community. So a heartfelt thank you on behalf of council and our staff to both of you and to the rest of the committee.
Thank you.
So with that, Councillor Marsh, you have a question.
Yes. How did you do all this? This is, that's my question. No, it's really terrific. The mayor said it all in terms of the thanks that I had hoped to pass along. I also, I want to know how many members are completing their last term, and do you have, or is there succession planning for this committee so that we can have some members return if they'd like?
We have 2 members who are serving their last eligible term on Compass Kitchener. We're also very fortunate to have had 4 new members who have just been appointed to Compass Kitchener and will be joining us officially in January, which will be terrific. As we've expressed before, I think in conversations with council, and as you would know, Councillor Marsh, from your own experience on the committee, there's a lot to learn as one joins Compass Kitchener, and there's a real benefit to being able to keep people engaged over a number of years to really get up to speed on the spectrum of issues that we're trying to address, and to really engage well in the kind of public consultation that we help the city design going into new strategic plans. So we're going to be very sad to lose 2 of our members at the end of their term. They've been terrific and have contributed wholeheartedly to our dialogue and success.
Wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. And so looking ahead as well to the new term, gearing up for building a new plan, because our 20-year plan has come to its end. Will Compass Kitchener be involved in guiding some of that work?
We'll be very closely involved with again, helping design the public consultation process. And I believe we'll be working with the consultants that are working on the survey as well, so that we can try to ensure that the diversity of voices that reflects this community is heard as we go into this plan and as we try and identify priorities.
Ever impressive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Marsh. Councillor Schneider, you're up next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks so much for coming in. Thanks for this report. It's good to see some positives in your report, but the areas to pay attention to, are there any priorities, or would there be an order of which we should really pay the most attention to of those 7?
We have not really attached particular priority to the areas. And I guess a really good thing that we're encouraged by is having sat down with the corporate leadership team, we've met with a very receptive response. So there's, I think you're going to find that, in fact, many of the areas we identified needed work, there's been total agreement on those, and work is going to unfold. So project management, really the focus there was looking at consistent project management standards across all the projects. We found it really helpful when there were terms of reference and work plans that set out clear expectations. It made it much easier to look at the lifespan of a project and how well it had succeeded. And also making the budget information more publicly available, because that has not been the case, and I think would be of interest and useful to the public. We have been really interested in the city's success with the public engagement processes, which I think are really important. And that was a key thing in impressing Compass Kitchener. At the same time, we've heard from a few people who have voiced some concerns that either they've been engaged in consultations, but don't have a sense of where those views were integrated into thinking on the issues before final decisions were made or policies were formulated. So that's one of the big things we would stress, is the value of communicating back following public consultation so that people understand what was heard, how that influenced final decisions. Without that, a tone of cynicism can emerge, really, that leads people to say, well, did the city just do it for the sake of saying they consulted? Did they really hear what we came to say? So I think there's real value in that. I think the city's done a great job, and closing the gap on that communications piece would really improve, I think, citizens' understanding of how well that process works. We had some feedback around the website. We're really keen to see a little more work done in terms of solving some of the broken links that exist in the website. There are a number of topics on which the city is actively engaged, but if you actually search those terms within the city site, you don't necessarily reach the information that you're looking for. We found that in particular around the strategic plan projects, and some of them, in fact, you would have difficulty finding out what the city's done by just searching. So that's in part what led us to our recommendation through the years of having a real dashboard integrated with the strategic plan on the city's website. So it becomes really easy for the public to identify those issues that they're most keenly interested in, have a quick click to a top tier of information that tells them what state of completion that project has reached, and also access to a second tier of information that would give them access to a few key documents that would tell them, it would maybe have the most recent report on the project or the policy or strategy that was drafted as part of that initiative. So just making finding that information easier for people. And on affordable housing, we were really interested in seeing the city both come up with clear definitions that it will use for affordable and attainable housing to ensure that effective and clear decisions can be made around both those terms and objectives. And also, we really wanted to see the city develop provisions in their legally binding agreements that would ensure that when projects generate housing that can be purchased at affordable rates, that there are mechanisms built in which ensure that that's not just affordable to the first-time purchaser of that property, but that there is a way of preserving that affordability over the long term. And lastly, on the housing issue, we were really keen to ensure that the city, having done a wonderful job through the task force's work of identifying the breadth of the problem and accurate statistics, to make sure that that data is updated on a regular basis and shared with council so that council's decisions are always guided by current information.
Okay, Judy, thanks so much. That was very detailed. Really appreciate that.
Good.
Wonderful. So that looks like it's all the questions. So I just want to again thank you, Judy, and thank you, Omar, for coming in tonight and for all your work over the past year. And we look forward to the work that we're about to embark on, particularly the new 20-year strategy. And no doubt all of you will play a key role in helping us achieve that.
Well, we look forward to being engaged in that process, and we thank you, Mayor Verbanovic and Council, for giving such a great voice to citizens in your processes of developing the strategic plan and providing feedback. It is a courageous and forward-thinking action to place Compass Kitchener in that role. We're delighted to fulfill that and look forward to working with you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe just because part of this deals with item 12.3 on the committee of the whole agenda, which is Mr. Chapman's report with respect to the 2022 business plan. I'll deal with the motion for that at this point in time, and ask if I can have a motion to move that. Moved by Councillor Singh, seconded by Councillor Schneider. Any discussion? If not, those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. We'll now move on to the reports of the committees, and I will start with Finance and Corporate Services and turn it over to you, Chair Davey.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock that the 3 items from Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Is there any input, comments? No. So then I will ask those in favor. Any opposed? That is carried. I will move on to 7.2, which is Community Infrastructure Services, and turn it over to you, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. I'm just getting to this section. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Schneider that we move items 7.28, 7.2B, 7.2C, 7.2D, and 7.2E.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ioannidis and Councillor Schneider. Any questions or comments? If not, I think just worthwhile noting that two of those items are, I would say, more significant. One certainly being our Vision Zero strategy, and the other one being the recognition of the Rotary Club of Kitchener's 100th anniversary. And I want to take this opportunity to publicly congratulate them on their 100th anniversary. As well as thank them for their $100,000 contribution towards the band stand at Victoria Park on the island. So it has been moved and seconded. Those in favor? Any opposed? And that too is carried unanimously. We'll now move on to unfinished business. There is no unfinished business. Any new business? I'll come back to regional update just after your motion, Councillor Marsh, because I just wanted to pull up some information from Dr. Wong for my update. So Councillor Marsh, I'll go to your notice of motion on the vacant home tax next, please.
Okay, sure. So I'm pleased to bring forward this motion, which is very topical, given that earlier today in our budget discussions, we focused on providing a $2 million fund that we will be deciding on all the details later in terms of providing supports to make sure we have more affordable housing units coming forward this next year and in the years to come. We know that affordable housing is a major issue. It's one of the top priorities, not only in the city of Kitchener, but in the province and beyond. We know that here in the city, we have adopted Housing for All, and we are doing all that we can within our lane, within our jurisdiction to do our part to work with other levels of government to address affordable housing head on. So when I learned that the City of Toronto is implementing a fee, it's called a tax, but it's really a fee on vacant residential units to encourage property owners to rent those out instead of just sitting on them as a pure investment with no tenants. I thought that was a really good idea. And so I am bringing forward this motion. Be it resolved that City of Kitchener staff be directed to work with the region of Waterloo and area municipalities to consider the feasibility of implementing a property tax charge on vacant residential units as a means of encouraging occupancy of those vacant units, and that staff report back on the findings to the Finance and Corporate Services Committee by the end of June 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Is there a seconder for your motion? Councillor Chapman. Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. We do have a number of questions. I know I have one as well. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I would like to ask staff, what is the practice now when a property is vacant? Do they not pay some property taxes? I know they pay some fixed utility charges, but do they not pay some property tax? Can staff fill me in on that?
So through the mayor, a residential property that's owned would pay property tax. So it is something that property taxes do apply. This motion speaks to the rental of units. And so it's focused on a tool to try to encourage the renting out of units where they might be held vacant. So that's the essence of the motion.
Do we have any indication of the number of units we're talking about here, that this is a problem, a serious problem? Or
so through the mayor, we don't have any information from a staff perspective. That is something that we would look to bring back as the motion is directing staff to look into the issue. So it's not committing to anything besides researching it more and determining whether there is an issue related to vacant units that aren't being rented out. So that would be something that we would look at in terms of bringing the information back to council as part of a June report or by the end of June. This is something that City of Toronto has put in place, and they have done some research on their own in terms of trying to assess this issue within the City of Toronto. And so we would take a similar approach in taking time to research the issue before coming to any determination whether this would be a tool that would be worthwhile recommending or implementing for the cities in the region.
Yeah, could I ask you again, if there is a rental unit that is vacant, what, how does that impact our the tax levy?
If there's a vacant unit, the owner of that rental would pay property taxes. So again, it's really about supply. Whether there is a unit that's being held and not rented out is really what the motion or the tool is intended to try to address. It's something that City of Toronto, as I mentioned, is moving ahead with. And it's something that we need to research more to determine whether it would make sense within our jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Councillor Singh, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Zola asked some of those questions. I had the same. I wasn't sure if a property that's being held vacant, if they were paying any lesser taxes than if it were to be occupied. And to my understanding, I'm hearing that it's taxed no differently. The other question I have is, I appreciate Councillor Marsh's intent to bring more rental housing units online. Be it there are many other streams that can be done to accomplish that. Earlier today, through budget, I had requested through an issue paper to that effect, exactly how the City of Kitchener can help stimulate more rental housing. And one thing that staff had said is we can't legislate tenure or the occupancy of a unit. So how is this different? How can we force a property owner to rent their unit as opposed to occupy it in a different way, or owner occupy it or keep it vacant? How is this different then?
Who wants to take that? Mr. Lautenbach?
So through the mayor, this is a specific legislation within the Municipal Act that does authorize municipalities to provide for an optional tax on vacant residential units. It was added to the Municipal Act back in 2017 at the request of the City of Toronto at the time. The City of Toronto operates under the City of Toronto Act, so they do have slightly different legislation, but very similar to the Municipal Act. And under this new addition, the Minister of Finance would have to designate a municipality under a bylaw to allow the municipality to proceed to put this tool in place. So it is specific legislation that is in the Municipal Act, and so it is a tool that would be allowed to be used if the Minister of Finance approves that designation.
And that's what I really thought as well. And City of Toronto was already referenced, but they are legislated differently than all the other municipalities under the Municipal Act. So how much of a problem is that within the City of Kitchener? I asked this, we're not at Toronto, we're not in New York, we're not in Vancouver. How much of this is an issue? And I asked this more so, if it is a problem, we definitely need to tackle it. And if taxing is one avenue, then that's great. But I would hate to put more staff time to 2 or 3 homes where at the end we spend more than what we actually return back. Would staff have any information on that?
So through the mayor, we don't have specific information in terms of how many properties this would apply to. That would be part of the information we'd have to look into and research. As I mentioned, City of Toronto has different legislation, so they've done some research on this and decided to move ahead. There are other cities that are investigating it. So City of Ottawa is another example. Some other cities in Ontario are also doing some research. But again, that would be something we would need to look into and bring back that information for council to then consider at a later date, whether it's something to pursue further or whether it's not an issue within our municipality.
You're muted, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I'll cue back in, Mr. Mayor. I see many others that have their hands up.
Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try not to get into the nitty-gritty of what the report will actually say, but I guess just following up on Councillor Singh's question, how could we even be made aware that a property is vacant? Like, what data do we have access to that would indicate that a property is vacant?
Mr. Lautenbach.
We'd have to take a look and see what other municipalities like City of Toronto. This was also introduced in City of Vancouver, what they use to determine that. I know that part of the approach that City of Toronto is proposing is actually a survey that would be mandatory, that would be required for owners to identify whether the property is vacant. So I'm not sure they have great data in terms of that. We do have vacancy rates that we can look to within different regions from CMHC. And so that's something that we would look at as part of, bringing a report back to determine what the sense of a vacancy rate for our region is, and in the context of how many properties that might represent in terms of this type of tool.
And my only other question is, again, this is obviously any councillors, freedom to bring forward a motion like this, but it is outside of our established direction. So I need to ask the question, especially with the June timeframe, can staff accommodate this request? Because I'm not sure how much work's required. Can staff accommodate this request within that timeframe, number one? And number two, will any other work that's already within our strategic plan be affected by it?
Mr. Lautenbach?
So through the mayor, we do believe we can accommodate bringing a report back by June in terms of doing some research on the issue and bringing back that information. We'd have to work obviously with the region of Waterloo though, in terms of looking at this as a tax policy. And so that is something that, we would have to collaborate on, but it would not mean that we'd be pushing off any other items because it would be our revenue division looking at this. And so we can commit to that time frame to bring information back.
Okay, thank you. In light of that, I'll just say that I will support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davey. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. I'm just trying to understand a little bit of the motion, and I think I don't really have much of an issue, but I guess the one thing, did we not change something with our commercial vacant units? Did we not just drop supporting them with tax relief?
Mr. Lautenbach?
So the vacancy rebate program was discontinued a few years ago. And so that was something that was phased out as part of that process related to commercial properties.
Okay. And so is there not a correlation between these two at all?
This is a completely separate process that focuses on the residential side. And so it is again, as I mentioned, it's an optional tool that was added to the Municipal Act. And so some municipalities are now researching it more to determine, given that City of Toronto's moved forward, whether it's something that would make sense.
Okay, and I guess again, my last question too, what would constitute an empty unit? 1 month, 2 months, a year? That's to me the fundamental question for me on this one, because.
So currently, based on the initial review at a high level of City of Toronto, what their approach is, they've defined a vacant unit as 6 months, anything that's vacant for 6 months. But those are details that would have to be outlined in the bylaw that council would have to put in place if this was something that at a further date you wanted to pursue further.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Councillor Marsh, for bringing this forward. I think it's a great tool that can be implemented locally to, hopefully, well, depending on the findings, of course, but help to stabilize the real estate market and stop these massive increases in the value of real estate and rentals. And that have shown to, vacancies have been shown to cause prices to go up. So I'm glad to hear that there's research that will be conducted on this. And I just wanted to ask whether Airbnbs will be, and owner occupied versus owner not occupied units will also be included in the study. And it might be too early to ask that question, but I think that data would also be very useful.
Mr. Lautenbach?
So through the mayor again, we haven't done extensive research on this, so this would be something we need to look at as we bring more information back. What we do know is the tool exists and some municipalities are investigating it further, and certainly the City of Toronto is taking the lead in terms of implementing it. And so we need to look at what their approach is and how it applies based on their bylaw that they're putting in place in terms of what types of properties and how they define that.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to, I appreciate Councillor Marsh bringing this forward. I'm just, I'm curious, a lot of the questions have already been asked that I was thinking of, but I'm curious. I don't think that Kitchener has ever had the vacancy rate that Toronto has experienced over the past, I don't know, probably 5 years. I know there was, my son lived there for a number of years, and there was condos just completely, like empty. So I don't think we're experiencing that. So I'm curious. I guess I'll just be curious to see what the findings are when we do this study. And I also wonder if we're not experiencing something more like in the line of renovictions than vacancies. People, and that's pushing the prices up. So that's just my thoughts. But I do appreciate Councillor Marsh bringing this forward. It'll be interesting to see what comes of it.
Okay, I think now we're going into round twos for everyone. If folks can stay focused on the questions that haven't been asked yet. Councillor Gazzola.
I don't have any questions. I have a comment.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Does anyone, the Councillors Ioannidis, Marsh, and Singh, are you questions or comments?
The question.
Comments for the other two?
Comments.
Okay, Councillor Singh, I'll go to you and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, Jonathan, you referenced some other communities that are also looking to implement this as well. How far along are they? You referenced Toronto and Ottawa. And can we look to see how they adopt the bylaw before we start putting in a lot of time and effort and investigating ourselves as well?
So through the mayor, I'm aware of Ottawa is fairly far along. I think they were second in terms of following Toronto. There's some other municipalities, I believe maybe City of Markham is looking at this. Some other regions are looking at it as well. I don't have them top of mind in terms of who they are. But we would look at what other municipalities have already done in terms of research and try to look at that in terms of our local context and include that in a report coming back. So the intent from staff would not be to do the same extensive amount of research. We would look to others that have already done it and help that inform a report that would come back in June for further discussion or consideration.
Is there an avenue that staff can update sooner so that if it seems as if that may not be as much of an issue for the city of Kitchener, we're not being too exhaustive, and again, a staff resource, where ultimately it may come down to not necessarily a problem currently in the city of Kitchener, so that we don't go too far along the process if it's not necessary?
So we certainly will bring it back as soon as we can in terms of after we've completed that research. The one aspect is just the collaboration with the region as well on this. And so it's just time in terms of having some of those discussions, but we will bring it back. And our intent was not to redo all the research on our own, but as I mentioned, it will be looking at others and we'll bring it back as soon as we can. We just want to have a realistic time frame and that's why I think June is something we can commit to. If it's sooner, we'll certainly bring it back.
Just keying in for comments afterwards, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, thank you. During the past couple of years, we've had many resolutions brought forward by members of council, but this is the first time I think we've really had a good discussion on one of the recommendations that have been brought forward. This may be a good thing, but at this point, I'm not convinced of it, and I won't be supporting it. I think there appears there are going to be a lot of studies going on. I'm prepared to wait until the studies are done by the other municipalities. It's like, why reinvent the wheel when somebody else is studying it? We might as well take advantage of their studies. I'm also afraid that it could be time consuming, not only for our city staff, but also for regional staff. And you're all well aware of the problems with affordable housing, and I hate to see our staff being taken away from that area of work that they might be doing in that area to study something that many other municipalities across the province are studying at the same time. So I'm prepared. I'm happy to not be a leader and sit back and let these other municipalities do their research and their study, and then we can build off of their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gazzola. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I'll be supporting the motion. As long as it doesn't really take too much of staff's time and they really look at what other municipalities are doing and what their research is, because anecdotally, I can probably tell you already that where the market is now and with the conversations that I have on a regular basis with real estate agents, this won't do much of anything. And it's not really doing much of anything will be in Toronto as well. We're dealing with individuals that have, if they are holding these, they have vast net worths. They don't, and if they are, they're foreign buyers that are whatever, sheltering their money in Canada. So I really don't see that this is going to have much of an impact here. But again, if it's just to do a look at it and see whether it's has any teeth and maybe helping with the supply issue, then like again, I am supportive of that, and I really don't want us to waste too much time on this, and I'd rather not incur more cost than what I think we'll get out of the program. But I will support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. I'll come to you last, if that's okay. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, so I will support this as well, like Councillor Ioannidis, with some concerns. And the concerns are, through my questions, I already reiterated that my issue is the amount of time that this will take and the overall net benefit. If we ultimately spend more time in costs and researching than what we get back in the extra taxes, or on top of it, if there's just a handful of, or just 1 or 2 units out in the community, that's not going to help anything with supply. So my comment would be to staff, it's not a matter of just, we'll come back to you as quick as possible. There's certain data sets that we can look immediately. Initially, I thought about adding an amendment that staff be directed to come back and outline what the vacancy rate is. That right off the bat will tell us if this is a problem in the city of Kitchener or not. I don't want to do that because, I want to give benefit to Councillor Marsh and her effort to see exactly what the issue is and investigate it a little more than obviously that data. But again, I would encourage staff that that's where they should start, not necessarily looking at strategic plans, what other cities are doing, or deep conversations with the region or other partners in the region. Let's look within her own boundary and see what the vacancy rate is. If it's not a problem, then hopefully they can report back quicker to council and say, we looked at this, it's not an issue right now, perhaps we look at this later on. So I would be hopeful that staff are mindful of how much they put into this, so that it's not something that we exasperate a lot of resource only to come back in June and feel like we did something. We don't accomplish anything by just feeling like we did something, but I will support it for the time being.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. I'll also support it because it's considering the feasibility of implementing this, but I do share the concerns that Councillor Ioannidis and Councillor Singh brought up. There's things also like how long can a unit remain vacant? If somebody purchases a unit and they want to duplex it and renovate it, and that's going to take 6 months. There's just those little things to consider as well. And that's not all covered in this, but I believe that'll be covered in the feasibility of things. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just make my comments then before I turn to you, Councillor Marsh, if that's okay. I will support Councillor Marsh's motion for the time being. I do think this certainly is an issue. It's an issue in particularly in larger urban centers like Vancouver, like Toronto, like Montreal, where you often have foreign investors that are looking to park their money, in a safe jurisdiction, and don't necessarily go through the trouble of seeing those properties rented. I'm not, I'll be honest, while I do believe there are some properties locally that have been acquired for that, I don't have a sense from the people I've spoken with that this is a big problem in Kitchener or Waterloo region. But I think this, this initial piece of work will indicate that. And in fact, if it is, then we'll have the opportunity to decide if we want to actually do something about it. And I think by the time this information comes back, we'll also be able to identify if there are other steps that provincial or federal governments are taking, and where this will rank in prioritization of limited staff resources in terms of tackling the various ideas that will no doubt be coming to the table over the next few months to deal with the overall affordability issue. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to you, Councillor Marsh, for the final word.
Thanks so much. And I really appreciate the fulsome discussion that we've had here today. And I can totally appreciate the hesitation here and there from different angles, but I do want to allay some of the concerns that were outlined. Number one, this is not to penalize somebody who's trying to renovate a unit and prepare it for future renting. And I think that it should be a tool that includes the option to just make sure that the city knows, oh, well, we're renovating this unit right now. It's going to take longer than 6 months, whatever. Even it might be a longer period of time that we determine would be the definition of a vacant home. I think that right now in the city of Kitchener, we have an all-time low in the official vacancy rate. The number of rental units that are available to rent are very minimal, but I think that I think we might be surprised to see how many vacant homes or rental units there are that are not put on the market. I have 2 vacant homes right on my block. I have another one across the street. I have heard of several within the downtown area. In fact, one of the residents in my ward was the one who brought her concerns to my attention. That was the impetus to look into this further, and that's Sarah Pearson, who was unable to come as a delegate tonight. But I want to thank Sarah Pearson for bringing it to my attention. She had just bought she was able to buy a property and was kind of shocked and surprised to learn that a rental apartment right beside hers has been vacant for 15 years. And anecdotally, we are hearing that this is a bigger problem, I think, than we might expect. And it's not vacant houses that are all boarded up necessarily. It's houses that are made to look like they are occupied. And I think that it would be good to be able to find out how we can discover vacancies rather than, in a way that's efficient and not time consuming for our staff. And I'd like to explore that with staff when we're looking at coming back with staff's follow-up report. Now, I just want to also highlight that if we were able to proceed with implementing some form of a vacancy fee, that it would be my intention that we would create a fund so that the fees collected would then go towards other affordable housing units. We talk about housing stock, housing supply all the time, and we're working really hard to create more housing supply. But what about the existing housing supply that's underutilized or unutilized at all? I think that we need to consider that, and let's just see to what extent this could be alleviated just through an incentive for property owners to rent out their units. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Recorded vote, please. Recorded vote, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, or thank you, Councillor Marsh. It's been a long day. A recorded vote has been requested. The motion has been moved and seconded. So I will start with Ward 10, Councillor Marsh.
In favor.
Councillor Chapman.
In favor.
Councillor Johnson.
In favor.
Councillor Ioannidis.
In favor.
Councillor Singh.
In favor.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Michaud.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Gazzola.
Not in favor.
Okay, Councillor Schneider.
In favor.
Councillor Davey.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well, so the motion carries. Thank you very much, Councillor Marsh. I'll now move back to my regional council update, colleagues. And today's update is primarily going to focus on the COVID-19 situation within the community. And, you know, I have to be blunt. I mean, there's some sobering realities that our community and the province and the country are facing, particularly in regards to the growing presence of the Omicron variant that today was announced has now been confirmed in our community. COVID-19 cases are, as you know, increasing both locally and provincially. The latest provincial modeling projects that this trend will continue and potentially significantly strain Ontario's healthcare capacity towards the end of December and into January. And that's without accounting for the potential impact of Omicron. You know, in fact, we already know now that because the hospitals have been ramping up on surgeries that have been delayed as a result of COVID earlier on, they are operating at capacity or over capacity. And so any increases as a result of COVID will result in them having to go back and start looking at potentially, you know, revisiting medical procedures and so on. They're also, those same hospitals are also seeing just an increasing amount of illness coming into the emergency wards. And, you know, a great deal of that is, you know, probably because of, you know, people have just put off going to the doctor for so long over the last 18 months. And we're starting to see over the last 20 plus months, rather, we're starting to see the impacts of all of that. Dr. Wong did announce today that the situation in the Waterloo region is evolving rapidly, and the Omicron variety has been found in the region. There have been 4 confirmed cases thus far, but those cases have a very high number of contacts. In fact, there are over 500 high-risk contacts associated with these 4 cases that are related to sports teams and cases within those sports teams and their clusters. We're seeing rapid and extensive spread amongst contacts. And, you know, this is likely a further indication that Omicron is spreading rapidly within the community. And when we talk about those 500 high-risk contacts, that's within 9 sports teams that have suspect or confirmed Omicron cases within our region. As has been noted, the public health is focusing on those direct contacts, but Dr. Wong has made a series of recommendations to be considered. Those recommendations include strongly recommending that workplaces cancel or minimize the size of any in-person holiday parties or gatherings, and also that workplaces, as has been noted, both provincially and regionally, that workplaces look to return, look to pausing their return to work, and in fact, look to returning to a work from home situation wherever possible. Dr. Wong is also strongly recommending that people limit their unnecessary social contacts and limit the size of any private in-person gatherings as a way of dealing with this. There's still a lot to be learned about the Omicron variant, and the public health professionals continue to learn from themselves and each other, both in terms of what's happening within Canada and what's happening around the world. And as you know, Europe and so on is several weeks ahead of us in terms of this situation. The best defense continues to be to see people immunized as much as possible. As you know, the vaccine is available now with the pediatric dose for children between 5 and 11. And as of today, those 50 and older are all eligible for their third booster dose as soon as possible. And in fact, those 18 and older can start registering now for dates after, I believe, January 3rd. A reminder that people can go onto the regional website to register for COVID-19 appointments for their first or second dose, or their third dose, which needs to be 6 months or 168 days after their second dose. And in addition to the clinics that the region of Waterloo is hosting, people are encouraged to visit their participating pharmacies as well as their doctor's offices as alternatives for obtaining the vaccine. I think that the last point I will make is that, clearly as we go into the holiday season, excuse me, this is sobering news for all of us, because many people have been doing the right thing. I mean, they've been getting their vaccinations, they've been physically distancing, they've been wearing their masks, they've been washing and disinfecting. And so, getting this news, particularly with the Omicron as we enter so close to the holiday season, is disconcerting. However, I think it's important to remember that we've all pulled together thus far, and we'll continue to pull together as a community in order to deal with the current challenge that's been thrown to us, and work hard to keep the community healthy and to hopefully not be in a situation where more significant measures need to be considered either provincially or locally by the medical officer of health. So that, council, would be my update. As I say, I think all of this is news that none of us like to hear, but I think it's important that we're all aware of it, that it be shared publicly within our own municipality. As you are aware, in light of this news, our own staff team has been meeting today. They will be, there was a meeting of the regional pandemic control group earlier this evening, and the subgroups, including the municipal one, which is chaired by our CAO, Mr. Chapman, as well as the recreational group, will be meeting tomorrow to consider a number of the recommendations from Dr. Wong, which does include an examination of pausing sport and extracurricular activities. And she's certainly recommended that to both the public school boards, both public and separate, to take a look at that from a school perspective right now, and asking sport groups to consider that as well. So there will be additional news from a municipal perspective shared in the coming days as staff have an opportunity to consider all this information and report back to council and the community. So that would be my report. And Councillor Ioannidis, I see you have a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Urbanovic. Has there been any, I know this is ever evolving and changing, and being that it's the holidays, is there any discussion with regards to that, maybe in the province or anything like that, that, you know, taking a bit of a break for the summer, for the holidays, like having things closed down for a couple of weeks while it's the holidays?
So certainly those are not conversations that I'm aware of at this point. You know, obviously there's been strong messaging from the provincial medical officer of health as well as the regional one, urging people, you know, strongly urging people to take various steps on their own without going the step of suggesting further shutdowns and so on. You know, recognizing that those certainly have societal and economic impacts, both financially and on persons' mental health and well-being as well, and beyond the physical impacts of COVID-19. Having said that, the situation is evolving rapidly. I will say that through the Ontario Big City Mayors, I've suggested that we add this on to onto the end of our housing summit on Thursday as a topic of conversation amongst the provincial leadership, the rest of the mayors and the big city chairs. Whether or not that happens at this point, I don't know, but I do know there's a lot of people, dealing with these issues right now, trying to figure it all out.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough situation to be in, but I really don't think strongly urging residents is going to be strong enough to stop individuals from having family gatherings and all that stuff. But that's my opinion.
No, and everyone's trying to find that, you're right, and trying to find that right balance between hoping that people, as they have largely over the last 20 plus months, done the right thing, hoping that they will continue to do that and listen to the advice of the provincial and regional medical officers of health, but also recognizing, I mean, human nature kicks in at some point, and it, I think people were very much looking forward to connecting and seeing each other, and the proximity of this to the holidays is, I think, proving to be challenging. Okay, I don't see any further questions, so we'll move on to questions and answers. There being none, we'll move on then to the bylaws. And I'm going to be looking that leave be given to the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed in the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and second time and stand referred to committee of the whole. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Galloway-Seelock and Councillor Johnson, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there any additional late starter bylaws?
There are none, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We'll now move into committee of the whole. Motions to that council resolve into motion that council resolve itself into committee of the whole to consider the agenda, moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Chapman. Thank you. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I'll turn over to you, Councillor Davey, who's chairing today's committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. We have quite a few items under committee of the whole, but we'll begin with, someone could please move the tenders, the two tenders, moved by Councillor Schneider. Any questions on the tenders? Councillor Gazzola?
The first tender, there were no bids. I've never seen that before. Can staff tell me where do we go with on a situation like that?
Ms. McGoldrick?
So through Chair Davey to Councillor Gazzola, we are seeing more and more single bids or no bids related to fleet and equipment. So as part of our fleet group, they're connected to groups across Canada, in fact, North America, and this is becoming more commonplace as supply and demand has made it difficult to get equipment. We do know through reaching out to the recommended bidder that there was an error in terms of trying to submit. So we do feel we would have received this one bid through this process, but because there was no bid submitted within the timelines, it allowed us to have conversations specific with this vendor.
So were we able to, being as there were no other bidders, we were able to go back to the one that intended to bid and deal with them?
So through the chair, when we do have an unsuccessful process, it does allow us to then sole source in this case. And so that's what we've done related to this vendor. Certainly, as Ms. McGoldrick indicated, we are finding on fleet equipment, it is becoming challenging to get even one bid on something. So multiple bids is a challenge just based on the supply chain issues. And so we believe that it is justified to go to the supplier that has the ability to supply both of these chippers at this time, but the bylaw also allows us to do it if we have put out a process, which we didn't receive any bids, which was this case.
Thank you. I have a question on the second tender also.
There's no one else in the queue, Councillor Gazzola, so please go ahead.
Now, I'm just in the second tender, there's quite a divergence between the winning tender and the second tender, the second bid. I was just curious as to what the budget for that project was. I wasn't able to find it. I'm not saying it's not there. I couldn't find it. But what were we budgeting for that work?
Mr. Goldberg?
So through the chair, the budget is made up of multiple accounts related to various business areas of the city. So this is dealing with all access soils. So whether it be through a water main break, sewer repair work, cemeteries work. And so the budget fluctuates based on, or the actual expenditure fluctuates based on the need on an annual basis. We do know over the past 2 years, the average spend was about $375,000. But I don't have the total budget from each of the line items across the city.
But you're saying now that you're looking, you said the average spend was about $378,000. Well, here we're approving a tender for $683,000. So we're expecting the spend to be more than twice as much, or at least twice as much.
So through the chair, the spend will be based on the actual amount of soils, XX soils. What we do know, so as part of this, and you'll see the cost escalation, this relates to new legislation to manage excess soils. And so part of that is around reducing the amount of soils that are exported. And so as part of this work, you'll recall in 2020 that council approved upgrades to the Kitchener Operations Facility site to reuse beneficial soils. And so as part of this, the goal is to reduce the amount of excess soils, so the amount of soils that would be exported through this contract, and to reuse soils. So it's not quite a a comparison in terms of like for like between the previous quantities and the current estimated quantities.
But if we're now using, it sounds like we're now reusing soil that we haven't in the past. Why are we issuing a tender for twice the amount that we've done in the past?
So the quantities, because this is, we use estimates based on previous known quantities. So the quantities remain consistent in the tender because we don't, when the soils arrive at the site to be processed, it will depend on the nature of the soils in terms of how much can be reused and how much will need to be exported. So it was based on previous quantities, which is, and the cost increase, and you can see that the costs have increased because of the additional regulatory requirements about sampling and handling. That's what's caused the amount that is greater than previous spends, but we don't anticipate that amount being spent, if that helps.
So that helps, yeah. That's a big point, you know. So you don't intend to jump from 387 to almost 687. You don't. You're prepared if you need to, but you're not expecting that.
That's correct. It will depend on the number of water main breaks, the number of excavations that we have, and how much can be reutilized within those as beneficial reuse versus excess soil that needs to be exported. You are correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been moved. Those in favor? And I think that was everyone, so there won't be anyone opposed. Next, 12.2A has been dealt with. 12.2B, can I get a mover?
We've dealt with it. Sorry.
12.2B, I thought we dealt with the information item 12.3A. Do we deal with 12.2B? We approve that?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. Save me some time. 12.2C, the membership appointments for the Equity and Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, moved by Mayor Verbenovich. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I just had one question or concern about the composition of the committee. I mean, I think it's very diverse and does a great job of including many important sectors of society, but it doesn't have any person on the committee that identifies as having a disability. And I think there was one person who actually applied and identified themselves as somebody in this category. So I was wondering if we could add another person to the committee rather than taking somebody off, but is it possible to add another person given the nature of the committee? And I think from the very beginning when the composition of the committee was discussed, there was it was made clear to the public that disability would be included, if I'm not mistaken. So I just wondered if that could be revisited.
Okay, I would actually, I don't recall that. I was under the impression that GRAC would have covered that, but Mr. Chapman, I see your hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ellen Morleg-Silk is the author of the report. I see that she's in the attendee waiting room, and so if she could be promoted by the clerk, it might be helpful for her to give a 2-minute overview of the process that was followed and then to respond directly to the questions been posed about adding another committee member.
Thank you. Good evening. When you're ready, Ms. Morleg-Silk.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor Chapman. So you're right that there was one member of the applicants who did identify as having a disability. But I will just, as Mr. Chapman indicated, I will just back up a little bit to talk about some of the bigger considerations that were at play here and how the decision making came to what it was. I mean, I know I explained it in the staff report, but you know, there were several considerations that were made in relation to the appointments that were done. And as I mentioned in the staff report, there were several very strong applicants that had put in their application for this. And all of these different considerations were made, including looking to make sure that we were providing an opportunity for voices from people who had not yet been able to contribute to the city or contribute to these kinds of committees. And so for this one in particular applicant that you're referring to, this person currently co-chairs GRAC and also was a member of the Mayor's Task Force. And so there was, part of the discussion, and we had very fulsome discussions on many of the different applicants. And really, yes, absolutely, there was an attempt to make sure that we had a full variety of people represented on this committee, but it was also part of the consideration is that there is also another entire committee devoted to accessibility and disability issues, and that's GRAC. And so, whereas all of the other people who had applied and who were appointed on this had never had an opportunity to be part of these kinds of committees before. And so the decision was made to really prioritize those voices. And, also take into consideration that this is the inaugural term of the Equity and Anti-Racism Advisory Committee, and it's a 10-month term. And then we're going to be, doing the entire process again in the fall, along with all of the other advisory committees. And so it was also, part of the consideration was like, yeah, this might not be perfect. This might not have all the voices, but this is only a 10-month term. And then we will revisit and do some, do some very specific targeted outreach to specific populations to make sure that we get more applications next time. So this is really seen as, this was part of the decision-making as well. And so, it was the way that people, like the questions people, or responses people gave to the questions, but also ensuring sort of the breadth of experiences and prioritizing voices who had not had a chance to be part of these kinds of things again. And so that just gives like a bit, like a broader picture. It's your prerogative in terms of what you choose, as a council to do with the recommendations that have been made by the nominating committee, though, of course.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I'm not questioning the selection you've made. I just thought that it would be very valuable to have somebody from the disability community on this committee, because GRAC isn't the same. It's a region-wide body, and they look at things that come to them. They don't go out into the community and advocate different positions or views. So I think the mandate of GRAC is very different to what this committee is, and you've done a great job. I'm not questioning that. I just think I'd like to move that we add one more position, and that be this applicant that identifies as a person with a disability. But I'm like I said, I'm not questioning any of the selection process. That was just something that stuck out for me.
Okay, making that motion, then we will go through the queue. Mayor Rabinovich.
Well, thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you to Ms. Morlag Silk for the work she has put into this and the report, and for just reminding council of some of those components. But unfortunately, I will not be able to support an amendment. And I'm not sure if somebody's actually moved the actual list. And so I'm certainly prepared to do that, Mr. Chair, if nobody has. I do want to remind council that back in September, we created an independent committee, as is noted in the report, to spend their time and to advise us and to nominate a group of individuals from the applicants, so that, quite frankly, this isn't a political committee, but rather is a community committee. And I just want to remind people who those 6 community members are, as outlined in the report. August Adelman, a member of the Jewish and 2S LGBTQ plus communities and disability advocate, Colleen James, an equity and inclusion consultant, professor at Constable College, Altag Al Khalifa, a representative from Kitchener-Waterloo Multicultural Center, Fazia Beg, a representative from the Coalition of Muslim Women, Scott Williams, a representative from Spectrum, which is Waterloo Region's Rainbow Community Space, and Tara Bedard, a representative from the Waterloo Region Immigration Partnership. I do understand where, the point that Councillor Chapman is raising, but I would really like to suggest to council that I think if we go and start tinkering with the work that this committee has done and has put many hours into, in my view, is a bit of disrespect towards them and the work that they've done. I think if we, fundamentally felt that the process was flawed or they did something wrong, then that's the role that we play, with that final check and balance. But otherwise, I think we have to, it's incumbent on us to, if we want to be true to the process, to respect their nominations. And as has been pointed out, this is really a short term. It's a balance of, roughly 10.5 months and 11 months. And the new council will be making their new recommendations come next November 15th.
Okay, thank you. For clarity, Mayor Verbanovich, you did actually move the original recommendation at the beginning. So Councillor Chapman would be an amendment we'll deal with at the appropriate time. Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, I too am very happy to support the recommendation. And I too want to thank the members of the nominating committee. I'm sure it was such a tough job. It is so hard to say no to so many qualified candidates. So thank you also to all of those who applied, whether you were selected for this round or not. We appreciate all your intention and your willingness to volunteer your time to work on this very important topic. And I also will not be able to support the amendment. It's not our place to do that. And I would encourage anybody who didn't make it to apply again. And we will look to see some additional diverse voices for the next round, and to keep some of the ones who will just be getting their feet wet in this committee in this year. So those are, sorry, I didn't have a question, just comments.
That's okay. Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask them or what. I don't want to.
If it's on this item, absolutely.
No, there's a list of a nominating committee, and it gives us a description of who those individuals are. And then there's a list. There's an 11-member of the new committee, and there's really no information about those 11 individuals at all. Am I out of line to ask? Like, are these individuals all from the city of Kitchener, or was that a prerequisite? I mean, normally, do we not, when we're appointing members to other committees, do we not at least have a one-line description of who they are? Or I'm just asking. I'm sure the group that have picked them knows and knew what they were doing. I'm just, as a member of council, do I have any right to know anything about these committee members?
Thank you. Ms. Merlegso.
So just to clarify, yes, we did. I did include a confidential report that went to all members of council that had the full application information for each of the applicants that were selected. So there were two reports that you would have received. One included all of the information for those who were assigned or recommended on the committee, and the other report was for the unassigned. And so what was included in this report was the question that is mandatory for all members of advisory committees, which is, do you live, work, go to school, or own property in Kitchener? And so they were required to answer yes to that question for them to be considered for this committee. And then, how they answered the rest of the questions gives you quite a bit of information about each of these individuals in terms of their life experience. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize. I for some reason I did not see those reports. If that's the case, I'm totally at error for not. I did not see them, and therefore, had I not mislaid them, I would not have asked the question. So that answers everything.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. No apology necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. I won't support the amendment because as council, we should not be adding or subtracting any members that this committee has selected for these committees.
Okay, very good. I do not see anyone else in the queue. Councillor Gazzola, I can't lower your hand. You have to lower it yourself. Okay. So we will take the amendment first, as put forward by Councillor Chapman.
Chair Davey, sorry, just not to be difficult, but was there actually no, we're in committee of the whole, we don't need seconded. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So those in favor, we're talking the amendment now. Those in favor? And opposed? And the amendment fails. Now we'll vote on the main motion. Those in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Very good. That carries. Okay, move on to item D, the declaring of surplus lands the city's needs. Could I get a mover for that item? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any questions? I just have one. To be honest, I don't recall this situation happening in the past. I just want to make sure I understand. So are these lands that the city held for a period of time, and then once they're declared surplus, they go back? Like, I don't understand how they're held and who they go back to. Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, and so this was a legal report, but I will try to answer your question. So my understanding is this was a temporary pumping station that was created on a subdivision plot of land. So it was created temporarily for that use until the permanent pumping station could be made. And so it wasn't our land to begin with, and so it was on that plan of subdivision to allow for that temporary sewage flow for transferring back.
Oh, okay, so yeah, I guess the word surplus threw me off, as if we owned it. We never technically owned it. Okay, I gotcha. Okay, thanks for that clarification. Those in favor? And any opposed? None opposed. Very good. Can I get a mover for the next item, the appointment for the Property Standards Committee and Board for Centre in the Square? Moved by Councillor Johnson. Any questions? Not seeing any. Those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Next item is the repeal of some policies. Could I get a mover? Could I get Councillor Ioannidis? Any questions on this? It's very exciting stuff. Not seeing any. Those in favor? And that carries. Next here we have the execution of facility rental agreements. Could I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Schneider. Any questions on this? Not seeing any. Those in favor? And that carries. And there actually is an information item, but there is a recommendation for it. It's the KW, the joint services we do at the City of Waterloo. Could I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Singh. Any questions? Not seeing any. I'll just quickly comment that I'm always happy to see how we collaborate in this. Those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And Madam Clerk, sorry? Are there any
committee rise and report, but I'll wait.
Pin in that. Any additional items, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have 2 items flowing from caucus earlier today. Ms. Saunderson will put that on the screen for you.
Okay, could I get a mover for the first item? I think I need to take them separately. Moved by Councillor Marsh. Any questions? Oh, 1 second here. My screen disappeared. Okay, there we go. Any questions? Not seeing any. Those in favor? Okay, any opposed? Okay, that carries. And a mover for the second item. Moved by Councillor Schneider. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Those in favor? And any opposed? Don't see any opposed. That carries. Okay. Moved by
Move that the committee rise and report.
There you go. Moved by Mayor Benovich and seconded by myself. That the proceedings of the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken on the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date is attached here too and forming part of these minutes, and B and the same are hereby adopted and confirmed.
Oh, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Motion for third reading of the bylaws. Councillor Marsh, Councillor Galloway, Seelock, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And before we end, this is the last meeting of 2022. And so I want to wish council and all of our staff, but more importantly, all of the residents of our community, the best of the holiday season. I know some have already celebrated Hanukkah, others will be celebrating Christmas, Kwanzaa, the holidays, and certainly we'll all be welcoming the new year on January the 1st. So I know these, especially in light of the regional report, the holidays are likely going to mean some changes for many of us as a result of the public health situation, but I'm sure we'll all find ways to celebrate them safely. And so on behalf of all of council, would like to wish our citizens a happy holiday season and 2022 that's filled with much health and hope and prosperity. And let's all in the coming weeks remember to continue to be kind, to continue to show empathy and be understanding to each other as we all work through the journey of life that we're collectively going through right now. So with that, motion to adjourn. Councillor Michaud and Councillor Schneider, thank you. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you.